Hello. Tammy Talks Trauma is a podcast where we discuss the myriad ways trauma impacts our moment-to-moment living and how to turn a disconnected life into one of alignment. We dive into personal story and then practical ways to calm our brains and nervous systems as we heal and grow. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you find tangible ways to live your most vibrant life. Hello and welcome to 2024 era of Tammy Talks Trauma. We are starting off this new year with a guest named Liz Holland. Liz is the CEO and lifelong sensory processing disorder survivor/expert, and she is a 6-time international award-winning product designer and entrepreneur who has spent her life seeking solutions to all kinds of everyday problems, all just to live in her unrelenting body. She has taken her diagnoses and turned them into a company that finds ways to help others. Liz created her flagship Cozies line with the first 2 products, the Cozy Throws and the Cozy Coz blankets. These blankets help those who struggle with a whole range of issues from anxiety to social stress and circulation issues, or those who just want a cozier way to read and feel warm. While there have been many types of blankets and products that try to help people get warm, there has never been one that addresses the fundamental issue of warming your extremities. Until now. You can find Liz at her website, cozies.com. That's COZYZZZ.com. For a 25% discount code, please view the show notes or check out my Instagram posts. Hello, welcome to Tammy Talks Trauma with Liz Holland. I'm so excited for you to meet Liz today. She's got so many great things to share, and I just want to say welcome, Liz.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. Great to be here.
It's really great to have you on the podcast. I've worked with Liz a little bit behind the scenes and am excited for you to hear her story. So if you're ready, Liz, why don't you share a little bit with us about just where you've come to get where you are now?
Oh boy. Well, in my childhood, I had a whole lot of trauma. My therapist called it a mountain of little T's, the little traumas, as opposed to like a big T, which is, you know, we know what big T's are.
Yeah.
So, what happened for me is diagnoses. And, as a child, shouldn't have been born. If abortion was legal, you definitely would have been, not like an accident, but a mistake. And clearly told that I was a mistake many, many times. So I get to college, and I'd been keeping a secret my whole childhood that I didn't know how to read in the traditional way. But I would be beaten if I, there was big consequences if I communicated the struggle. So I spent my entire childhood till college trying to keep my secret. I knew how to get information from books. I knew how to listen really well and think analytically. So I managed to, even get A's and B's, occasional C's. And then I went to art school and I'm like, yeah, I can keep, focus my life in this direction. And sophomore year of being an industrial design major, first day of class, one of my professors said, "I'm dyslexic. This is what it is." And I was like, shit, that's me. And, it took me a long time to even just talk to him, 2 months where I was just terrified to talk to him. But then I found a specialist in dyslexia was actually working with our school. So I got to go into therapy at 19 years old because of that. And we spent about 10% on dyslexia and 90% on everything else. So it's a great way to start my adult life. And what I realized was the gift behind the dyslexia is that I had so many ways to learn. And then I taught myself to read. And, now I can read a book starting at the beginning and finishing at the end. And I found out that what I was doing was a form of speed reading because I would kind of search for words and then kind of go backwards and forwards. And I just had no idea why the words were jumping around. So, it started my adult life in a inquiry about all that I had experienced. And, like most of us, we repeat traumas until we I call it graduate, till we learn what we need to learn so that we stop repeating the same patterns. And so I've actually had 3 marriages. First one, I graduated from drugs and alcohol, and the second was physical abuse, and the third was the hardest of all, the emotional and mental abuse. And just all that came with it, belittling and all of that. So it took me a long time, but I graduated from that too. And somewhere in like the darkest times of the end of that period, I was in therapy again. My doctor's like, I think you've got SPD, sensory processing disorder. And so when we started to uncover all of those things, it was like, oh my God, yes, so many, all of my senses, are triggered, and I'd get triggered, all the people in my life would be like, what's your problem? Get over it. And I'm like, I should get over it. Of course, it shouldn't be a big deal, but it was a big deal. And especially when you have no support around you and everybody's putting you down for living in this incredibly difficult body. I've had headaches for every single day of my life, my adult life. And I've chased down so many, from pure Western medicine to anything you can imagine in Eastern medicine, and all of these things trying to find some relief for the constant pain. The sensory processing was definitely part of that. Especially now, I can function because I catch triggers early before they domino. But every once in a while, I get hit by something and it'll knock me down for 24, 48 hours even if I have a series of events. And, but I realized the gift behind that diagnosis is it made me a really good designer because I notice every detail and I can't stand details that bother me. I make prototypes like 3-4 a month for just to live in my own body, not really thinking as products to market, but just if I do this and this and this, or I alter this thing and I make it better there, and all the time, constantly making prototypes. And, but that was like, okay, understanding triggers, understanding my nervous system. As a person with SPD, it's mandatory to monitor my nervous system. And my vision for my company which is called Sensory Product Design, SPD, Sensory Processing Disorders, nod to that. And the vision originally was to shine a light on SPD so that people like me, adults that have struggled their whole life, can help their loved ones to see, this is what happens for people, to shine a light on it so that we all can accept each other better. But what I found out after I got going is it's really for anybody with a nervous system, because we all get triggered. We all, especially people with trauma, we have triggers coming at us at every direction all the time, and they're hard to, like with at least senses, I can close the shades if the lights are in my eyes, and I can choose my fabrics well, and I can, it's more of a logical solving problems. Whereas the other traumas are like, bam, you just got hit. And you're like, whoa. And, then once you've been hit, all the other senses are on high alert. And they might get triggered by something that wouldn't have been so bad without the first trigger. And that's what we all go through. All human beings get triggered. And we all need to tune into our nervous system to be able to overcome, to come back to center. I intended this first line to be as broad as I could imagine, and all people get cold. People can relate to the feeling of being so cold that you're shivering, you're tense, you can't, there's no way to relax in that space. So I created the very first blanket ever that has, it's called the Cozy Throwsy. For those of you that can't see it, it has hand and feet pockets. So it's the first blanket to ever address just warming your extremities. You can be all wrapped up. If your hands and feet are still cold, it's very hard to relax. And and for those of us that have a very narrow range of comfort, I constantly am adjusting and got my feet in, got my feet out. If my feet get too hot, then I'm in trouble because too hot is harder to solve than too cold. And, it's so narrow. So, mostly people, when they first get it, they wrap themselves up and it's like, yay, I'm finally warm. But then the pockets become even better because you can do the in and out thing. Nice thing about I'm putting the pockets down, keeping my hands free, but because the pockets have a little weight, it stays on my shoulders. And then if I have a hot flash, boom, you're completely out. And then you go back in. And, because you're often very cold again once the hot flash goes over. So, that is what I started with. I have a child's version. We're going to have a cozy cozy coming out in the spring. We have a cozy toesies too, but right now we have cozy throwsies and the cozy cozies, which is just a mini cozy throwsy. This is the best part. I've had some very stressful days lately, and I found that when I wrap myself up, it's like instant relaxation. It's like I can feel it immediately. Sometimes I come to it thinking, there's no way. I'm too stressed. There's no way it's going to help right now. And I get in and I'm like, oh, God, that feels good. It's like an adult swaddle, I think. I think the reason that it does that, you have this like complete, like safe place, and I can't emphasize enough how special that is. We have so much beyond our own trauma. There's all this going on in the world that's just seems to get exponentially worse as the weeks go by. War, global warming, women's productive rights. I mean, like, it's just battling at us beyond our own trauma. So it's like we have to find ways to feel centered. And, that's what really makes me happy about this product, because I get so many messages from people going, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's just a game changer for me. And people that also have trauma are like, oh my God, I can't believe how much this helps me. And so that makes me very happy.
What you've overcome is astounding to sit where you are right now. And I'm sure there were so many times in your life where you hoped for where you are now, but weren't sure you'd get there. So I just want to honor that. And
I didn't even know it was possible. Like, now I'm with this man that is the sweetest human being you've ever come across. And he believes in me and loves me. And it's like I was a dog that was kicked all my life and kept on coming back for more, thinking my love's big enough to solve this problem. And then you get adopted by this family and they actually like love you and take care of you. And you're like, life could be like this? Oh my God, I had no idea. And so, but it comes from the graduations. It comes from shining a light in the dark places. I like that metaphor because it's less scary if you shine a light on it. And you really do have to look at those dark places, and you have to, wrestle with them and get through it and trudge. Before I was diagnosed, I said it was the darkest time of my life. And at the time I had a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old, and 14-year-old's like, Mom, when are things going to get better? And I was like, I don't know, sweetie. I know they will. Somehow they will, but I don't know when. And, the good news is we've loved each other fiercely through all of this. And we're going to have that when we get through to the other side. We know fierce, deep love. And a lot of people never even know that. So yay. And I'm like, none of us have cancer. None of us have been shot. No, we don't live in a war zone. Like, at least there's that. Literally 2 weeks later, my older daughter gets diagnosed with cancer. And I was just like, and there's nothing I had to show up for. I mean, that's like big, real hard stuff. Yeah. But I realized at that time I developed what I call the 51% philosophy. And it's my philosophy that we all need at least 51% positive to 49% negative in our life. And so, or we'll drown, or we'll just die in that negative space. You can't function in that negative space. So I developed a technique, that was like, what's the negative positive ratio that I'm living in right now? How do I add more positive? How do I subtract the negative? So, first on the negative, it was like, can I limit what I give them situations, whatever. I'm gonna limit my time, my love, my energy, my focus, my attention towards those things that are constantly pulling me down. And it's like a gentle push away instead of a shove, because if you shove, they come back meaner. So learn that lesson. And then, how do I get more positive? Well, I call my first thing is a 5-second rule. When you're experiencing something yummy, like, take 5 extra seconds to just say, wow, yes, 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 yes. That's what I want. It feels so good. Feel the endorphins, whatever, soak it up for 5 seconds. And so you don't have to change like your life that much. And I managed to stay just around 51% through those times. But I also knew I'm developing a skill set that once we get through this dark, mucky tunnel, I don't have to invite back in the negative. I could be living at 80%. And I am living at 80% now. So, it's not like any of this goes away altogether, but you do, especially like death. I've had a lot of death, and my partner's mom just died. And, when somebody you don't even know very well, you're just a friend of a friend, dies, you feel it again. Like people that you've experienced loss on, they come back. Yeah. That experience comes back. And, it's funny. People that don't understand things that hit us hard, they're like, just get over it. Do you think I wouldn't if I could? If I could just get over it, boy, wouldn't that be wonderful? Mm-hmm. Don't pretend that didn't happen. It's like, boy, that'd be nice.
Wouldn't it though? Wouldn't it be great if you could just go, oh, I'm fine now. I've overcome it. Actually, part of my story is I thought I did that, and then I found out later when I got really sick that I had not done that. So
yeah, it does, Max. It does sneak up on you when you thought the work there was done.
Yeah. So I want to go back because you said so many beautiful things. I'm all about the power of positive thinking, and I'm not in a toxic positivity way where everything is great, rah, rah, rah all the time.
Right,
but in
right.
a way where
Pollyanna kind of, I'm fine, everything's fine. It's like real,
not the bullshit.
Real.
Yeah. But I know that our bodies hold on to negativity and our brains have a negativity bias. So I personally work really hard on trying to reframe my thoughts, reframe the way I look at things, to find the ways that I can address my needs that my nervous system has due to my own trauma. And plus, as you mentioned, all the stress of life just from existing, then all of our own personal shit that we've gone through and everything that has affected us. So I wanted to ask you, when you are taking into context past and current traumas, which I appreciated that you pointed out that, we're never over it. It's never like, I say overcome, but overcome isn't like it's gone. It's just that it no longer rules over you. That's how I view it. It's still there. Maybe it's in the back seat, but it's not in the driver's seat, is the way I view it. So, so with that, with current and past trauma, how does your sensory processing disorder affect your ability to address those traumas?
I think it's actually a gift. Because, like I said, I experienced so many triggers in my body just to live in this body. So it developed a good skill set. Oh, that little thing is affecting me. I've used this a few times lately. I had just a gold chain necklace on, very, very light, and I kept on feeling the clasp, and I kept on kind of going, just bugging me. And I'm like, Liz, what are you doing? Take it off. Because it's just one little one that shouldn't bother me, but it's bothering me. And if something else happens, I will have something else on top of it. So, and then, like I said, everything else gets on high alert. It's the same way with our mind and our emotional state. Once we have that first kind of trigger, if we don't acknowledge that it's there, we're much more likely to have another one, whether it is emotional and triggering in our body. So through this and starting this company and being a solo woman entrepreneur out in this world, I need to function. And my mental, emotional, body, sensory triggers for years would knock me down for weeks, months, years, even. It depends how you're counting, but yeah, years. Whatever trigger you have, little, big, whatever, it's like, if you're like, go away, I don't want you here. Then, like I said, it's kind of like the shove. They come back even harder, and so it's like, wait, that happened. Okay, yeah, it's making me think of that, and it's making me kind of dig up, and my mind's running round and round, thinking, reprocessing that whole experience, and there it is. So the sooner you catch it, the easier it is to say, okay, I get that, and that was big, and congratulations for all the work that you've done, to myself. And this little thing that's come up for me have more information for me that I might not have processed. So then you're like treating the trigger like a friend. But it's also like, okay, let's shine a light on this new thing. Let's see how it connects to all of the other parts of that thing, because they all connect to each other and they all get, the domino is the worst. I think that the soonest you can catch any trigger, the more likely you're going to be able to come out of it with good information and not a lot of knock you down time. Or have tools, have like my puppy dog here. She's my greatest tool for helping to settle whenever. It doesn't have to be a sensory trigger. It's just like, okay, I need to go to my little source for unconditional love and do some snuggles with her, or I get in my cozy throzy, or I pull out, one of my other prototypes to help balance out whatever's happening. But I can't balance it out until I know what it is. And, you can't always know exactly what it is. That's why, this one was much more of a surprise than just keeping your hands and feet warm and getting fully warm. It's like, if I wrap myself up in it, I feel my nervous system settling down in that space, while I'm all wrapped up, I go, okay, what? Then the creative mind exploring the dark places, you're safe here in this. You get to a safe place where you can trust that you're not going to get triggered too quickly. And it's a lot of hard work to graduate from these things, and just like I said before, what they don't tell you is it's incredibly rewarding every time you take a step towards a better way, to leave that behind and believe in yourself and trust, and ask the universe for guidance, and what do I need to learn in this moment? What can I do? It's like turning towards the stuff that'll help, and, and being easy on yourself. I was like, if your kid was going through this, what would you say to your kid? You wouldn't say you're stupid and wrong, and you'd be like, I'm here for you, and I believe in you, and, we'll work through this, and, all these good things that, fortunately is what I taught my kids,
Yeah.
and we have beautiful adult relationships. So, and even during my daughter's teenage years, the older one, she was like, "Mom," she knew about my childhood, and she's like, how did you become a good mom?" And I was like, "Well, I was determined. That was like my thing. I'm gonna raise my kids like I raised my dog."
Mm.
The unconditional love, and like there was a point that I was like, it always seems so clear when it's for her. The most loving choice seems so clear when she's involved. And I'm like, I wish it would be that clear in the rest of my life. And then I was like, wait a second, if I pretend that everything has something to do with her, then I'll get there. Because it
Mm.
ultimately does. Who
Yeah.
I am in relationship with my partner, who I am at work, what I do, they all affect her. So, I just try to be like the most loving I can come up with. And my mom,
Mm.
actually, the last communication about 10 days before she died was Mother's Day. She wrote me a card saying she wished she took lessons from me on how to be a mother.
Mm.
And so, things come full circle. And,
Yeah.
I never thought that would come out of her mouth, but it did.
Mm.
You can lean on those things.
Yeah. So you have trauma and triggers coming at you from multiple directions, and it sounds like pretty consistently and persistently. So when you have basically a mess of trauma,
Mhm.
what techniques do you use to untangle that mess so that you can meet your
It's so
needs
funny.
with your nervous system?
I've used that metaphor so many times. It is untangle the mess. It's like solve one thing at a time.
Mm.
I usually start with the easiest, and then you kind of work my way up there from there. But when there's sensory stuff, or when I have the multiple triggers, I just have to be okay with being catatonic, basically,
Yeah.
best for as long as I need to be. Um, but on a daily basis, I honestly do about 100 things a day that just are little tweaks here and there to fend off triggers before they happen. Because
Mm.
they don't happen, you don't have to recover from them.
Mm.
Then even leaving the house is like, okay, where am I going to go? What do I need with me so that if I get in trouble, I'll have some recovery tools with me. But it's hard. It's really hard. I finally learned I have to leave the house with a hat on, because even if you don't think you need it, then the sun comes out and then you don't have a hat.
Yeah.
So it's like plan ahead, notice trauma. It's all about being really real with yourself. What are the things that hit me, both little and big? And, can I steer my life around them
Mm.
so that,
Yeah.
but definitely having a lot of tools kind of for specific things,
Yeah.
the specific sensory stuff. But then within each sense, I have multiple triggers. So, it's like, oh no, what do I do with that one? It's always trying to fend them off
Yeah.
before they happen. That's always where it's best. But you never know. You never know
Mm.
when something's going to hit you. I came home, I had a massive headache. I'd been triggered. It's just rough, that particular outing. I came home and I had this big box, and I opened up and this toxic smell came out. And I was literally catatonic for 36 hours.
Wow.
I just, I couldn't
Mm.
function. And, the headaches it makes my headache go from
Yeah.
bad to worse like that.
Well, I think it's so cool. It's been so cool talking to you and just hearing. I never want it to sound like, oh, I know exactly how you feel, because I don't. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
But I can definitely relate to living in a body that can be, the way I describe it with my therapist is that it's a extremely challenging relationship, and because of my trauma in my childhood, the way I was traumatized was to survive. I just had to lock it all down. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have emotions, I couldn't have reactions, I couldn't have opinions. And when I did, I was very strongly punished. So
Mhm.
I learned to just, you know, lock it all
Yeah.
down in those times, which is really hard for me because I've learned as an adult that I'm a deeply feeling person. Like some of us just feel
Mhm.
much more deeply than others, and I'm neurodivergent, so that feeds into that. But my point is, it's I feel like my brain and my body are identical twins, and my body was the twin that was detested and punished and harmed, and my brain was the twin that was like, oh, everything is fine, nothing bothers me, I'm great, like this is
Mhm.
good, like I can get through this, I can do anything. um
Mhm.
and unfortunately you reach a point in your life where those twins have to learn to coexist, or else you don't survive.
Yeah.
So I've had to do so much work just to exist in this body, and I just wanted to say thank you for saying that sometimes you get triggered and then you're catatonic,
Mhm.
because I've been, even with this, actually with this business and this podcast, um, I don't know if I've talked about this yet on the podcast. I've thought about it a lot. I've talked with my best friend about it a lot. But when I launched the podcast, it was summer. And when I was doing all the prepping and planning and all of that, it was summer. And I was very excited and very, and I recorded my trailer like, I'm thriving, like I've overcome so much and I'm thriving. And that's still true. It compared
Mhm.
to where I was, even just a couple years ago, I am in a dramatically better place. But I struggle. I think the best way that I can put this is that just last week, my psychiatrist told me that she knows it's not feasible because I have 4 young children, 12 and under, but I am someone that she would strongly recommend if it were an option for me to go live somewhere in the South for the winters and then come back
Mhm.
for the summers, because I'm so severely affected by seasonal affective disorder. And
Mhm.
I think some of it is just in general the darkness that everybody struggles with. But I think also for myself, my childhood was a lot of escape, just
Mhm.
literally just getting out of the house so I wasn't there for them to direct
Right.
their issues onto. And
Mhm.
so a lot of my childhood was, I can remember reading books. Books were my big escape because, it was the 90s. So like, there were no iPads, and even if we had them,
Mhm.
then my family wouldn't have been able to afford one. So it was books for
Mhm.
me. Um,
Mhm.
but I can remember reading books up in trees. I can remember taking books into the woods. I remember like taking a book and sitting in a rock quarry so that I could read. I did a lot of traipsing around and exploring too. I don't want to sound like I only ever sat around and read.
Mhm.
But my point is that I do that outside. Like I would
Right.
get outside. And in the winter months,
You're a little more
there
trapped.
I was trapped. There was nowhere for me to go. And I really think that my body has that trauma and has held that trauma, and I'm working on it. And every year it's interesting because it's a little bit harder because I feel the depth a little bit more because I've healed enough every year for the pain to be a little bit more to say, well, here's the next level of suffering.
Mhm.
But also, it's really powerful because every year I recognize, like, but I am a little bit better. I'm a little bit stronger. I'm a little bit more resilient. Being very blunt and not wanting to trigger anyone, but I'm a few years ago, I was very close to ending my life, like closer than I have ever been since I was a teenager. And to see where I am now, it's really about perspective. Like I can have a hard day, but I can say, wait a second, like, but
The
3 years
company.
ago, I sat in my garage wondering about if I could just leave the car running, and would anybody believe I've accidentally listened to music too long? Like that, that is only 3 years ago. And that's only 3 winters ago. So when I look at where I am now, where that's not even a desire anymore, which is amazing. And I'm grateful for that because some people don't get that burden lifted off of them. They never stop wanting to end their life.
Right.
And I luckily have, I no longer want to. But my point is, the winter is really fucking hard for me. And sometimes I feel like a fraud because I'm like, I'm thriving. But then I'm like, but like you described a smell and it would have you catatonic for 36 hours. And I'm similar where there are just days where the fact that I got out of bed and did anything,
Hmm.
even brush my teeth and wash my face, is like, it's a big deal. And I
Yeah.
know that that's really beautiful, but it's also so fucking hard because our world is not friendly to that. Like, I'm very
Hmm.
lucky that I have a co parent who's in a position to help ensure that I don't end up on the street.
Hmm.
He's like, the way our relationship works, he still ensures that I'm financially taken care of as I'm working really hard to make money on my own. But
Hmm.
I recognize, like, if I didn't have him, if I had to go work a traditional job, like, I don't think I could. I don't think I would survive. I think I would literally not be able to be here. And
But
that makes me
yeah,
feel
or
really
not be able
pathetic.
to do
Like,
the job on their terms.
yeah,
I was
and to
always
be,
like approaching jobs with, could I be a little, do it a little this way and a little that way? And,
yeah,
because, I feel you. I was the same way. Like, I was unemployed during those years and I was trying to find a job and I was like, but I was also very aware of my limitations in my body. And it's
mm-hmm,
like, how are you going to like come on to a job like that?
yeah,
And yeah, it's I feel you there. And yes, getting out of bed is a good thing. It's like,
it is.
I would lie there going, being so thirsty, my mouth was so dry, my water was right here, and I couldn't pick it up. I'd spend
Mm-hmm,
an hour going, what is your problem? Pick up the water.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, so I was mad at myself. I felt useless. It was
yeah,
ridiculous. Even I have these great water bottles that and I have to lift my head to
yeah.
drink the water, and I still can do it.
I know. Yeah, I have to take a
But my
drink now.
therapist said, that's freeze. There's
Mm.
fight or flight, but the
Mm-hmm.
deepest level of trauma is freeze. And when
Yeah.
we're in freeze, the only way to get out of freeze is to accept you're in freeze,
Yeah.
and that you have to be there as long as you have to be there, and that,
Yeah.
getting mad at yourself or feeling unworthy, unsuccessful, and unable is just going to make you stay down longer.
This has been such a good conversation. And I know this is going to be hard because you have shared that you said you do like 100 things a day that are just little things to help you, get through the day, taking the best care of yourself as you can. But as we wrap up, if you could share with the listeners just one thing that you do that you would recommend to them to make their life a little easier or able to help them cope a little bit better, what would you recommend?
To notice your nervous system, notice the things, don't dismiss the first triggers, the little triggers, the things that are, after we've been triggered heavily, we can kind of see the whole path that got us to that, catatonic state.
I think you're spot on, though, that it takes noticing. My therapist talks a lot with me about that I've worked really hard on is to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't be curious if you don't notice first. So I think that's really powerful. And thank you for sharing that. I just want to thank you. I know we've spent the last hour together, and I'm really grateful for your insight and your willingness not just to share um, verbally and show up, but that you've you've created physical products that help people, which is so cool. And I love that you took what could have been a really shitty life and said, no, that's not my story, and took ownership, and that you work every day to to thrive. And I know that thriving, we all think that it's like, fields of flowers in full bloom, but I have been reading a book called Wintering, and it's about rest. And one of the things it talks about is how much life is happening in the winter, the inside
Mm-hmm.
of the trees, and all of the preparation and all of the things that are happening to be prepared for spring again. Like winter
Mm-hmm.
is a time of preparation. We think of it as a time of death because the leaves fall off and they die and the trees look dead, but it's actually a time of preparing to come back to the luscious times. And so I think thriving includes quiet and solitude and planning. And it sounds like you've really learned the balance of how to take care of yourself and how to put things out there that help other people. And I just am really honored that you came on here and really proud of you as a human. I'm so grateful we got to spend this time together. And I
Okay.
want to wrap up our time together by thanking you for showing up and being vulnerable and authentic. Those are my people. So you're my kind of people person. So thank you. And thank you for sharing not just your story, but the different, your different philosophies. And I really appreciated the 100 little things a day, because I think that people think that it's like one big thing, like, oh, have a big monumental 20-minute meditation in the morning, or, this incredible
Mm-hmm.
yoga workout in the morning, and then your whole day is smooth. And it's like, that's not how life
Mm-hmm.
works. It's little things. It's all day long. Like you said, it's noticing and recognizing what your system is saying to you. And I just think that that's so helpful and
Mm-hmm.
so wise. And so I'm just really grateful for you coming on and sharing that. And I hope that it really is helpful to people who listen. So thank you so much, Liz.
Oh, you are quite welcome, and thank you too. I love hearing your story and the vulnerability that came with it. And
Mm,
you're right. You're my people too. It's
mm,
like these are the people that you go, yes, yes. You know, I connect with them. I learn from them and stuff. So I hope that I've never had this on a podcast, but I hope we'll keep in touch.
oh, that's really sweet. I hope so too. Well, thank you so much, Liz. And to my listeners, I wanted this to be the first podcast of the new year, in part because I think these blankets are great and I want you to get them while it's still winter. But also, I I've wanted to come on and talk a little bit about thriving and how thriving requires work and planning and quiet. So thank you to everyone who is listening. Thank you to everyone who learned something. Please feel free to share comments, ask questions. You can always engage with me on social media or at my website, but always I'm here for you. So thank you so much to my listeners, and thank you to Liz. And I really hope that you truly do have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed joining me today on Tammy Talks Trauma. May you feel inspired and encouraged to apply what you learned so that you experience greater alignment and vibrancy in your one beautiful life. Please like, subscribe, leave comments or reviews. It helps this little baby podcast grow. You can always find me on my website, tammyrose.com, or on social media as @TammyRoseCoach. See you next time, and to you, gorgeous human, let's thrive.